Welcome to EdTech Speaks, a podcast bringing guests together to share their expertise and advice on navigating business and education in a technology-driven world. From entrepreneurs to vendors, higher education to corporate leaders, we'll uncover their perspective regarding the latest trends and technologies impacting your career or business. Our podcast is made possible by Downing EdTech Consulting, where people and technology connect. Hosted by Cher Downing, an experienced executive spanning a higher education and corporate career with specific focus on the EdTech industry. Dr. Downing is also an international and national presenter, author, and regular media contributor. Now here is your host, EdTech strategist, Dr. Cher Downing.
Welcome, everybody, to EdTech Speaks, a podcast where we bring guests to share their expertise and advice on navigating business and education in a technology-driven world. Our goal is to provide you with options for products, services, and knowledge that will help benefit you or your business. I'm Cher Downing, your host, and I want to introduce today's guest, CEO and founder of MovieCom, Scott DiGiammarino. Welcome, Scott.
Hey, Cher. Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
So excited to have you on the podcast today because you are in a unique space that we've all wanted to have access to for many, many years. And we won't even talk about how many people have cheated the system and violated copyright. We'll just talk about the opportunities that you're going to give them at MovieCom. So we're going to start out and ask you to tell us a little bit about your background and how MovieCom came about.
Sure. Well, first of all, you'll tell by my accent that I'm from Boston originally, so I'll pronounce my R's. But I worked for American Express Financial Advisors for 25 years, and I was promoted out of Boston to run the Washington, D.C. region in 1992. And the region that I took over at the time was ranked 173rd out of 176 regions. It was bottom of the barrel, terrible employee engagement scores. People weren't showing up to work. And it was just one of those environments that you said, ugh, what am I doing here? But we put some systems in place. We painted this vision. And long story short, in 1 year, we went from number 173 to number one. And we maintained that top ranking for almost 20 years. And it's funny, the way Amex measured us was on both hard numbers and soft. So your hard numbers are your year-over-year growth, your profitability, and your soft numbers are things like employee engagement and leadership impact, which are kind of like a temperature check of the organization. But the challenge we were running into, quite frankly, was we were growing too fast. I'll give you an example. In 6 years, we went from one office to 207. We went from 30 employees to 1,600, and we went from 3 leaders underneath me to well over 100. And because we had some best-in-class metrics, my peers all around the country used to always want to come visit us. You know, what are you doing? Can we come visit? Can we talk to your people? Can we steal best practices? And what happened as a result of that over the years was when they went back to Dallas or LA or Seattle, they magically had a vice president job opening up someplace, and they would always steal my top talent. So
Sure.
Over a 3 or 4 year period, we promoted out hundreds and hundreds of leaders all around the country. And we were recognized for that and pats in the back and stock options back in the day. But it's go get them next year, Tiger. And
Right.
Unfortunately, at some point in time in a corporate leadership world, when you have leaders that are younger with less tenure, it's harder to make an impact and drive results and growth results that you essentially need. So that was one problem we were having. And the second problem we were having was we were recruiting right out of college. And thousands of college kids. We were the ones who sat in all the universities, a little 8x8 cubes with a clock behind you. And of course, we knew within 17 seconds if we were going to hire somebody, based on their soft skills, right? And so what was interesting was we saw that the new employees' attention spans were shrinking. So
yes.
back in the days, we were running 2 to 3 hour meetings a day, training sessions, motivational sessions. But back in the mid-90s, late 90s, people started tuning out on us. So I'm saying to myself, did I lose it? People have heard my jokes, they've heard my stories. And so what we knew was that we needed to come up with new and creative ways to motivate, to communicate, to connect, and to influence behavior of these people without necessarily having to rely on the 28 or 29-year-old junior vice president that I just put into place.
Sure.
So does that paint a picture for you where we're at?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think not just your industry, but it's been all of our industries have seen that.
It's incredible. It's unbelievable. So we had to get creative. So I guess my question is, do you like, scale of 1 to 10, how much do you like movies?
10.
Okay, you're a movie person. Okay, great. So, it's so funny, the data and how many people love movies, talk in movies, get engulfed in movies. And I'm the type of guy, when I want to watch a movie, I remember the lines. I remember the scenes, and I remember the emotion that I have when I watch the movies. And so I decided to use my love for movies as a way of engaging my people. So the way it works is, if you worked for me back in the day, every week I would have a theme of the week. Perseverance. So it'd be like it was all my principles and my values. So perseverance, service, integrity, hope, courage, teamwork. And I'm saying to myself, how could I drive my principles, my values through the organization in a way that people will remember them? Because my whole goal was, I wanted people to be able to make principle-based decisions when they were by themselves. And so, because I wanted them to recall and remember the scenes that we were using, so they didn't have to rely again on the junior vice president. So back in the day, we'd send out a weekly email every Monday morning and say, this week's about courage. And then I would type up why courage was important. And I would say, it kind of reminds me of the movie A League of Their Own. And for those who've never seen it before, it's about X, Y, and Z. And as you're watching this scene, I'd love for you to share with me the most courageous decision in your life. Now, mind you, this is when social media was just starting out. And here's what was amazing. We would get back 200 to 300 stories a week from people that had nothing to do with business. They'd say, when I was 9 years old, here's what happened to me. And then we would take those best stories of the week, and with your permission, we'd share them with everybody else. And we built this culture and this environment where people felt connected to one another.
Sure.
And if you were in my Baltimore office and you were having a bad day, your peers would help you because they felt this connection.
Right.
So one day I get a phone call from the CEO of American Express, a guy named Ken Chenault, and Ken came in and said, listen, we're going to send McKinsey in, the big consulting firm, to study you guys, because we have no idea what you're doing, but you guys, it's working. So McKinsey comes in, they spend there 6 or 8 weeks, and they do all their evaluations. They create that 9-inch report. And inside that report was a whole section talking about our culture and environment that was driven by storytelling. And those stories were made to come out to life based on this movie clip project that we were working on.
Right.
And so all of a sudden, throughout all of American Express, people are using my movie clips. Keynote speeches, texts, blogs, emails, e-learning modules, all the training, whether it was online or face-to-face, because people were realizing that the younger generation was here to stay. So when I see McKinsey doing that, I see senior executives at a Fortune 50 company doing that. I'm like, geez, maybe we're on to something here.
Exactly.
So what I started doing is I started cold calling the Hollywood movie studios. Disney,
just pick up the phone, call Spielberg.
I'm in the backyard, by the pool. I'm calling Disney, Universal, Paramount, Sony, the rest of the gang. Say, look, guys, I got something here, and it seems to be working for a Fortune 50 company on a consistent basis. We're seeing people that historically had average results being able to do extraordinary things. And I personally think that there are zillions of people around the world, whether you're employees or students or team members, that if they had access to what we had access to, maybe we could change lives. And then I don't know if you know about Hollywood, but they're very slow in making a decision. Sharon, please do not lose respect for me on this, but it took me 9.5 years of negotiating to finally get a yes.
Honestly, I believe it. They were just talking the other day about when Disney purchased, Pixar, and Pixar said, oh yes, we'll do whatever you want. We're so excited. And then they started working on a project, and it took them almost 5 years because Pixar kept saying, well, we like this, but, and Disney finally kind of stepped in and said, we kind of own you guys. And so we got to move this along. But, and what they talked about was, it wasn't either side was wrong. It was that they work in two different ways. Disney is paramount for kicking things out rapidly. And Hollywood is consistently slow and methodical in how they do things. And so they said, like any two people that get married, it took us a while to kind of find to where we could live together because we approach projects so differently. And yet the end result is the same about bringing that movie passion and, really appealing to the audience and all those same, as you said, all those same culture pieces were there, but it's just two entirely different approaches. So that makes absolute sense.
I got to tell you, the experience, as I replay the experience in my mind, a lot of it's about relationship building. You know what I mean? And trusting a trusting relationship, understanding where they came from, and based on their history from the first movie ever made. And so it was great. I got to tell you, looking back at it now, the relationships I built, the things that I learned about how they work, how they tick, et cetera, and I had to adjust to them, and as well as they had to adjust to me. But I can tell you, 9.5 years later, I get a phone call one day from Universal Studios, who said, "Hey, I think we got this thing figured out." And long story short, we became one of the first companies ever in as they say, in the history of Hollywood to gain legal rights. That's important, legal rights to their movie and movie clip libraries. And that's when I left American Express to start MovieCom.
Well, and I think, that's a vivid point with the legal rights aspect, because part of the reason they probably were so slow isn't just about the nurturing and the conception of what they own, but they also have a little bit of a bitter taste in their mouth because over the years, people have snagged their clips and used them, sometimes inappropriately, sold their movies on bootlegged copies. I mean, they've had a bad run with a lot of these things. And so like anyone that owns something and, fool me once concept, it's like, oh, now you want to do this. What are you going to do? What's in it for us kind of thing. How are we going to protect the integrity of what we're doing? So, it makes perfect sense, but I'm so excited to hear that you have, the legal ability to do this because everyone loves resonating with a movie clip.
Right, exactly. Well, but it's interesting. I mean, let's go back to a point you were just making. It was interesting going through the negotiation because I asked when it was all said and done, I said, why did you choose me? Why did you say yes to me when 99.9% of the other deals that come their way you say no to? And one of the things that I'll never forget is they said that we understood the value of the brand. And so when I was at American Express, part of my job was to protect the brand. Part of my job was to go on the FedEx field at a football game and give away a $50,000 check, to each charity, right? And so the studios have decades worth of brand building their brand. And so the number one thing is you have to protect. I tease. I said, look, it took us 9.5 years to get this deal. It could take 9.5 seconds to lose it. So I am very aware of the copyright provisions. Matter of fact, I don't know if you know this, but in the COVID bill that just passed a couple of weeks ago, late December, there's something actually inside of the COVID bill all about copyright law. Okay. And it's really to protect copyright owners. Sure. So people that are training, teaching, coaching, using clips illegally, as you said earlier, this new law that just literally came 6 weeks ago, they're going to be very, very careful of. And that's kind of what we bring to the table is the legal rights.
And it's something that we've always seen for years. The FBI marks now movies when you're going to watch them. You see that at the beginning. The NFL is very, very aware and watches constantly about, illegal game showing and those sorts of things. And now what we're seeing is with the heavy adoption in the last year of utilizing technology for everything. We're recording Zoom meetings, we're recording what people are talking about, and we've not really, broached into that yet, but it's going to be interesting as we move forward because for many places that have not just done a live meeting, but have done a recorded meeting so others can, play back if they weren't available, suddenly there's proprietary information on there. And it's not to say that it's, the end all. It can be something very, very small, but it's just something that maybe you want to launch even internally that now somebody else could hear. And the other thing I saw the other day was the discussion of hearsay. So you're at home on your Zoom meeting talking about how, your company's going to do this super duper really cool thing and you don't want anybody else to know about it. but your 12-year-old son hears it, goes down the neighborhood street to play with a buddy and says, oh, hey, my dad's working on whatever. And all of a sudden, he tells his parents and it starts to move out. And so they were talking about the fact that, we've not thought also about the hearsay piece of it, because we're all sitting at home doing our meetings and we're maybe in separate rooms, but maybe not, or maybe we're within earshot. So it's a continuous battle for IP and copyright situations. But I think what's exciting is that you take that fear and concern out of a project by saying, hey, we've got you covered, work with us, and here's the things that we can do. I thought about you this weekend watching the Super Bowl, because many of the ads were geared towards a movie. Yes. And it was a memory, and so for people, and it was funny because you'd see some of the postings where people were like, well, I don't even remember that movie. Well, you're not the demographic they were going after. Every piece had a different demographic or something that resonated with you. Just seeing Bruce Springsteen and talking about bringing America together, there's a whole collective age group that is older, but that had a huge impact. They were talking about, are you a true Seinfeld fan or not? Because if you were a true Seinfeld fan, you would have recognized the music being used for the Tide commercial. Yep. Because that's the song George used for his answering machine. Right. But if you weren't a Seinfeld, then you were just like, this didn't make any sense to me. So there was a definite demographic reach, but it always tied back to our memories, which is what you're doing with MovieCon, is tying back to those memories and also bringing in that introduction of taking that foundational concept and giving a practical vision of it. So talk to us a little bit about what are some of the types of places that are using MovieCom and how are they using them to enrich what they're providing?
Right. Great question. I want to just first make a comment on what you said, because it was brilliant. Interesting. So I did a TED Talk a couple of years ago, and it was all about, it's called Why Movies Move Us. It was all about the neuroscience of the brain, of what happens when people actually watch short video. And it was we did all the study, and there was one fact that we found, I think it was out of Stanford or Harvard, one or the other, and it basically said that 81% of people, when they watch a short video, less than a minute or two, will retain almost 90% of not only what they saw, but how they felt. Wow. And the emotion of it. So, for example, if you hear the Rocky music, most people will tell you they want to go work out. As part of the TED Talk, I talked about Jaws, right? And, when people said this, when they still go in the water, they hear that music, they get scared. Jaws is 50 years old. You know what I mean? So I was giving a keynote one day, and I think I showed a clip from Animal House, and I remember the audience was younger, millennial Zers, right? In my day, that was a really fun movie. But they're looking at me like I got 10 heads. Yeah. Because it's like, I think I remember my mom and dad watching this movie. but what was funny was, because we stream everything and you could actually buy, rent, or download the movie, all of a sudden there was a boost in Animal House movies. So I get a phone call from the studio saying, "What did you do?" Because the new generation hadn't seen that movie before. So anyway, I think what you're saying is absolutely smart, because it's all about getting people in the right mindset and ultimately influencing the way people will behave, or influencing overall behavior. Again, going back to my original principle, which is all about when you're by yourself, we want you to make principle-based decisions. We want you to keep messages sticky. Yep. So as a leader, as you've led organizations, you find yourself constantly repeating yourself over and over and over again. But if you can get a movie star on the big screen to say the same thing you're saying, it's much more apt to stick. So anyway, to answer your question.
No, I love that, and I love that you did a TED Talk on it, and I hope that our audience goes out and looks that up, because it is amazing. Music does the same thing for us. We all hear a song and we remember where we were, or we remember a great memory of, something that occurred in our lives. And it doesn't matter how many years have passed. It's it was like yesterday in your head, and it's so funny to think. They were showing a video the other day, a woman who was formerly a principal ballerina in Russia, and she has Alzheimer's, and she has reached the point where she doesn't really, recognize anyone. She doesn't speak anymore, or anything. And they started playing Swan Lake. And she immediately, sitting, started doing all of the movements with her arms because, she had performed in that for years and years and years. And they're looking at her now because they're fascinated by this, that, she has managed to forget all day-to-day type of activities and things that we do as individuals, but yet she could perform the entire piece of Swan Lake sitting in a chair. So where is that deep-seated connection that we retain?
I'll add one more. So my new best friend since the summer is I got a Peloton bike. I don't know if you've heard on Peloton, right? But one of the ways you could search for classes is based on music. So I'm a sucker for classic rock and roll, rock, or give me Michael Jackson all day long, and I perform differently on the bike than when I'm listening to music that I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just interesting. So anyway, but to answer your question, so we started out as what they call a SaaS-based tool for corporate leaders, which was my background. So basically our target market was a manager up to a CEO of a company, especially if they had a younger generation workforce, which again mimics what I had at American Express. So by a statistic for you, which is fascinating, in the next 2 years, 75% of the global workplace will be our kids, the millennials and the Zers. And the biggest challenge we're seeing out there in the corporate space is that today's leaders don't adjust how they teach, how they train, how they motivate to that younger generation. The younger generation is going to check out, they're going to disengage, and they're going to quit. And the cost of recruiting, training, and retaining in the corporate space has never been higher. So we started out there, and then all of a sudden we started getting phone calls from online trainers and coaches that are, again, that are presently using, like, say, YouTube videos or videos that, in their training. And to your point, they got really frustrated with finding the right clip. They got really frustrated with dealing with the ads, and they were scared to death about the copyright issues, as they should be, to your point earlier. Yeah. Then all of a sudden, when COVID hit, we were inundated with phone calls from educators, professors, teachers, e-learning developers, LMS systems out there saying, look, everything's kind of going online right now. And the common denominator I found was people, first of all, professors, for example, were trying to figure out, how do I use Zoom? How do I use this technology? And and this is last spring, right? And you could feel the frustration about trying to learn the technology. And then once they did learn the technology, the second question was okay, how do I make this thing engaging?
Absolutely.
One of our clients from a big university said to me, she was, I just can't stand the fact that I always have to be on.
Yes.
And I've got 40 students I'm looking at all day long, and I'm doing 3 70-minute classes a day, and it's just hard. Mm-hmm. And so what's happening is these educators are using our clips to kick off a Zoom meeting. Right? Or maybe every 12 to 15 minutes to incorporate a clip or incorporate a message, or maybe to close strong at the end of a Zoom meeting. And what's really interesting is the feedback we're getting. Is because if you're an accounting teacher, you may not necessarily want to find a clip about accounting, but maybe you want to find a clip about thinking a certain way, thinking logically. Or if you're a history teacher, maybe you're not looking to go back to Saving Private Ryan from World War II, but maybe you want to talk about strategy or perseverance. And so we're seeing this all over the place. So now not only work in the corporate space, but now we're doing a lot with education, K through 12 as well as higher ed, and we're doing a lot with e-learning and LMS systems where these developers can actually use our clips and build modules around those clips to make the messages more memorable.
And that is so exciting. As someone who's built a lot of courses, one of the things that is draining as a developer is someone hands you content and it is just paragraph after paragraph after paragraph of dry text, and maybe a few PowerPoints that are slides of paragraph after paragraph just put into something pretty. And so, you build this course, and we talk about this all the time. And I talk about it with folks that I work with who say, I almost feel bad. I mean, I did exactly what the client asked, but it's just so dry. It's just so dull, and they swear that's what they want. And they swear that's what their clients love. And it's like, I'm not buying that. I think it's just they're the only one offering that particular product. You need it. You just take it. We've all done that. I need to get this certification out of the way. Here's the one place offering it. Fine. I'll just do it, get it done and move on with my life. But I don't enjoy it. I don't get anything out of it. And I think we see that a lot in higher ed. The world is changing faster than ever with these younger students who are tech savvy, not in terms of hardware, software applications and the way we used to think about tech. People get surprised that, well, they don't understand how to use a spreadsheet or they're not very good at doing this. Well, no, that's not tech for them. Tech is social media. Tech is augmented reality. Tech is virtual reality to them because they're gamers. They're doing their own videos. They're running their own channels. That for them is technology. And that for them is community. Yes. The fact that I have 40,000 followers, that's my community. If we'd have said that in when we were their age, people would have looked at us like we were crazy. They'd have been like, oh, you have pen pals, but you don't know these people. It's a different world. And so professors are struggling to make that earmark with them.
Yeah, no question. It's interesting because part of it comes down to ROI, if you think about it, right? So I'm spending all this money hiring a developer to develop these learning modules. But students, in this particular example, have to watch and they have to stay engaged and they have to act and remember, they have to act accordingly based on what they're learning. And what we've been told, and I've seen, because my old financial services, we used to have compliance online, which was like the kiss of death. But what's interesting is you're not going to get the ROI, the amount of money you spend, if there's not a change or enhancement of behavior at the end when it's all said and done. Number one. Number two is what we learn is what I described to you in the corporate space about the big challenges about how today's leaders got to adjust for the younger generation. It's the exact same thing in education. Okay,
absolutely.
And because it's the exact same outcomes is the fact that if you can't engage the students in this particular example, they're going to check out, they're going to disengage, and they're going to quit. And as student turnover, percent of students that graduate within a 4-year period, all the statistics out there, especially in this type of world that we're in, could be a lot better. And so this is like a new and innovative way, legally approved way that you can get these guys' attention, you can keep them engaged, you can keep your messages sticky and memorable, and you can have some fun with it.
Well, and when you think back to it, higher ed has had this situation for years and years and years. There's always courses that you're required to take. And everyone, drags along and does them, and they're not looking forward to them. And then when you can take electives, what happens? Students talk to each other and say, oh, you got to take this class. This guy does really cool things, or, she does all this stuff. And those classes fill and have a wait list.
Yeah.
And there's other classes that are sitting open with ample room and no one's taking them. And we've never learned from that. We've never gone in and said, what is this person doing that is so intriguing that the student body is talking and saying, you're going to love this class. You've got to do it.
Oh, sure. You're so funny because it's funny. My girls went to college, but my youngest went to Penn State. My oldest went to University of Miami down in Florida. And the way they picked their classes was based on, I think the app was called ratemyprofessor.com.
Yes.
Right.
Yep. It's technology.
Well, it's technology, and they get feedback from their other students that were at classes. And what you just said is so spot on, where you're basically waiting lines to get into certain people's classes. And what we learned, again, professors and teachers that are our leaders in my mind, right? Because they're trying to influence behavior just like corporate leaders. And I think everybody have the bell curve. So you have 10% of leaders that are just charismatic. And just naturally they exude something that connects with people. Then you get 10% that, probably shouldn't necessarily be in the job. And then you get everybody else in the middle. And the people in the middle are people that have great intent. They're hard workers, but for some reason it's just not clicking as well as they'd like it to be. And what we found is they're constantly searching for ideas, tools, new ways of doing things. And that's our market. Is the people that just have the biggest hearts in the world and really want to make a difference, but they just need something new and innovative to win.
And it's interesting because in talking with friends who have kids that are school age and at home, they talk about this, that if they have multiple children, they see the difference in how teachers are dealing with this. And so, I've heard people say, wow, my one kid has this fabulous teacher, she dresses up and she's got posters, and she's showing clips, she's doing all these great things. And then, my other kid's sitting in the other room and the person's like reading from a piece of paper and then cuts off and says, okay, go do your homework and we'll log back in an hour kind of thing. And so she's like, just seeing that difference in dynamic is amazing to me.
We were told a story. This is like literally last week. Same exact example you're talking about, and the college students. The mother basically saw the second story you just told, where the student was actually playing video games versus being on camera, right? And she actually ended up calling the school, the dean of the school, and saying, I'm paying $65,000 a year for my daughter, my son, to be sitting here playing games because the professor is just not engaging. What are you going to do about it? and so again, you can see, so you have educators who are screaming for help. Okay.
Yep.
And you have parents that are saying, we got to do something to engage these kids. Again, going back to ROI and making it a great experience for them. And so, and a lot of folks don't have any new ways of doing it. And so again, that's part of the role that I'm trying to fill.
So talk to us a little bit about what are the types of movies that you have? What are the genres that you cover?
80% of our movies are relatively new. Those that came out in the last 5 to 7 years. We're constantly adding. So when Fast and Furious 48 hits, we get an email from the studio that says, hey, would you like to add this movie? So we're constantly adding. But 20% of all of our movies will go back to the late 70s and early 80s. Okay. So, kind of depending on who your audience is. In the higher ed space, specifically, I would show the newer movies.
Sure.
And today we have movies, but we're also expanding. So down the road, we will have episodes that are on cable and on Netflix and Amazon Prime, and we'll have animated movies for the K through 12 space. Matter of fact, Universal sister companies called DreamWorks Animation that has Shrek and How to Train Your Dragon.
Oh yeah.
So that's really a lot of fun. And then really down the road, what we want to do is we want to have user-generated content, so it won't be just movies. So things that you would put up on YouTube. Now, but what's important for us is two things. Number one is every piece of content that comes our way goes through 2 levels of curation. The first is human curation, which means we have a team of people that all they do all day long is watch movies. and they find these scenes, like tough job, right? They find these scenes, these moments that they pull out. And then the second level is what we call AI, the artificial intelligence. So we take those scenes and we run them through our AI. So now we can search by facial recognition. I could type in Tom Cruise, Angelina Jolie, and it finds their face. It could search by objects like basketball, sunglasses, car. We could search by keyword, like the word courage, and we could actually find someone saying the word courage. Or a full sentence like, I'm proud of you, and it finds it. Because what we found is our clients, educators, corporate leaders, trainers are busy. And they just don't have time to spend hours and hours and hours going through. So this whole art of AI and curation piece that we put together essentially saves them time. We want them to find the right clip for the right situation in literally seconds.
That is just amazing and so exciting to hear about, because now that people get used to it, having seen this firsthand, when a faculty member adopts something, everyone around them, it becomes the Tom Sawyer effect. Everyone around them goes, wow, his classes are going really well. His student ratings are up. I need to do something. What's he doing? And
Right.
so you start to see adoption, not necessarily for the right reason at the onset, but once they get into it and they start to see the value,
Right.
it becomes a different adoption process. So I can see moving that forward. You think about when emojis came out and we were just excited to put a smiley face. Now we want to do GIFs. And so we search and we look because we want to put in somebody from Friends. We want to say Chandler, and
Right.
we wanted to find us all the GIFs that are out there available with Chandler. We all have these things that we carry around. Again, it's those memories. You remember a scene and you're like, oh my gosh, this is so it. and you want to grab those and you want to reuse them.
Because as you know, GIFs, they like a 2 or 3 second loop, right?
Yep.
And they don't talk to you. Part of our libraries, we actually give you a choice of up to a 3-minute clip, which you can trim as short as you want. But we also, half of our library is talking GIFs. So it's the famous movie line. You can't handle the truth. Bailey's on and off.
Yep.
You have to be low. So you have a choice of what you want to essentially end up doing. And by the way, it's interesting you say, you talk about the professor before. So I was doing a presentation at a major university, and I had a bunch of professors in front of me, and the deans were there. And I said, how many of you folks use video in your classrooms? Everybody raised their hands. So 5 years ago, when this was just a brainchild thing, I had to tell you why, 1 minute video is equivalent to 1.8 million words. I think today most people get the impact of video, which is good. So then I said, okay, great. So how many people use movie clips in the classroom? And maybe half the place raised their hands. So then I said, where do you get your clips from? So this one guy says, I have a closet of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of DVDs. And in the middle of my class, I'll go in, I'll get the DVD out, I'll tee it up. I know exactly where to start. I said, wait, you do this in the middle of a class with the kids sitting there? Like, oh my God. And then someone else said, well, I go on YouTube. I said, great. What's that experience like? She says, I spend probably 4 to 6 hours looking for the right clip. And I'm looking for the right quality, like high def or whatever it may be. And I said, well, what's that experience like? She's like, I got to deal with these ads. It takes me so long to do it. And so then I asked the final question, said, how many folks here are worried about copyright? 200,000 will fine, 5 years imprisonment, blah, 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 blah. And the whole place raised their hands. So while they're doing it, and some of them talk about this thing called fair use out there, which is big time gray, as you know. It was just funny to see the reaction. So people get it. They're looking for tools like this. And like I said, I highly encourage you to just go check out our site because it's very, very easy to use.
Well, and it's fascinating because in education, fair use does allow faculty to do certain things in their classroom, but it doesn't supersede oftentimes when there's something that has particular IP implications. Universities are aware of this. And so having worked with faculty for years, I have had times where I've received a cease and desist letter on behalf of one of the faculty, and I've had to go tell them they have to quit using something. For years, Scott Adams has fought this with the whole Dilbert strip. Faculty are notorious because Dilbert is real life, situations. Scott Adams will tell you he didn't actually do any writing. People were sending these stories into them and he adapted them into cartoons. And they're such normal situations that everyone that reads them goes, oh yeah, I've been there, done that, seen that happen. So faculty love them and drop them into their slides all the time. He has a whole legal team that does nothing but scout illegal use of his materials, and then he sends a letter out. And then faculty are like, well, now what do I do? That's what I was using.
Take that one step further. What we talked about earlier with Zoom, for example. I mean, you can tape a Zoom meeting, right? Yeah, I can have my cell phone. I can send this all over social media. And all of a sudden, you're busted.
Yep. Exactly. So taking that away, that fear away, but also giving the university peace of mind that it's not going to rear up and be an issue, because I can guarantee you there was probably at least one dean and a provost sitting in that room that day when that guy said, I have 100 DVDs in my closet, that went, who's aware of this?
The blanket license cost of a MovieCom subscription is far less than which is fine. But that is our goal. That is our goal. Is with the way we price this whole thing out is an individual professor can basically go on for price of a cup of coffee a month and get legal access. Most of our time is spent doing enterprise deals. So where it's a blanket license for the entire organization, which again protects the university in this particular example, or the corporation.
Well, and many times, we found at several universities that I've worked at, we oftentimes can't get the university on the first blush. They're kind of like, we got a lot going on this year. There's a lot of bills. No. So we adopt it within a department and so we pay for it out of a departmental budget and we use it. And then other departments hear about it because oftentimes faculty teach in more than one department. So there's a cross-pollination that occurs. And all of a sudden, another department wants to buy it. And then pretty soon they're like, well, why are we paying for this? Why is the university doing it? So you take it to the university and they're like, what do you mean we have 6 departments using this? When did we start? We should be using an enterprise license, so we save money. So oftentimes it's a snowball effect in universities as well, particularly when they're large, because it's just hard to get everyone to understand the magnitude. But once they see the return, then it becomes interesting.
By the way, I'll give you one more use case that we're seeing out there right now. I don't when we used to recruit, remember we talked about this earlier, and I told you we knew within 17 seconds if somebody was actually going to hire somebody. It was because of the soft skills. Do they look at you in the face? Do they dress nicely? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What we're learning is that most schools aren't teaching that. Okay, at least in a fun and engaging way. So we are talking about probably 20 colleges right now about using our movie clips and building a gamified strategy where they can use clips to teach the necessary soft skills so that when the student gets close to graduation, they're in demand for jobs. And it's a very simple idea, but it's all about making the messages memorable and sticky in a fun and entertaining manner. And because, as you know, being a father of 2 daughters, my number one objective is I wanted my kids to get a great job when they graduated. Which, by the way, because they get a great job and the school calls for a donation later, they have the money to pay, right?
Absolutely. It's a whole chain of events that occurs. But I think,
so much you could do with this is my point.
Well, and the other thing is that career departments struggle, because students get pushed through their programs all the way through, and then all of a sudden you become a senior and it becomes career services responsibility to mold you and make you job ready. And, so you hear them talk about the fact of, students don't realize it's a problem showing up late and, they don't understand how to dress. And so you're trying to give them life's lessons in a 30-minute session. Recruiters are going to be on campus tomorrow, so you need to wear a suit. You need to do this. You need to do that. And so it's a shock to their system. It's hard for career services. They're trying to show that they're getting things done. So when they have tools like this that can really, the gamification piece is brilliant, because it's just one more tool in their toolbox that they're desperately needing. And the world is getting harder because business casual has taken on even a whole new ramification, both not just from working at home, but just I notice when I work with folks that are sadly half my age, their idea of dressing up for a meeting and my idea of dressing up for a meeting are 2 very, very different things.
Right.
And yet they feel like they've put an effort. They've wore something that they wouldn't wear every day, but they're doing it because they feel like they're going to meet. So again, it's just the whole perspective is different in each of the age groups.
Well, when it comes down to what I really think is happening is because of what's happened over the last year, even maybe not even from the last year, is that things are changing, and leaders just need to understand that the world is changing behind them. Whether people are getting younger and younger, different thought process, different ideas, tied up in technologies. You talked about social media. And if we don't adjust as leaders, if we don't adjust to this new generation versus having this new generation adjust to us, it's not going to work. And this is from centuries and centuries and centuries of learning this stuff. And so when you say, well, I was brought up this way, I was trained this way, I was taught this way, I was motivated this way, so that's how I'm going to do it, I think you'll find you won't get the results that you're looking for, especially with the Zers and the millennials right now.
Yeah, you're definitely stifling that creativity. So you were talking about just amazing outlook in education and in training and in just resonating, not just for the job that a person is currently in, but these lessons that can stick with them long term throughout their career, throughout their changes, throughout whatever situation that they're being, experiencing and going through because of having these visual, emotional, memorable pieces that come together in their head. It is just, it's so exciting. And my brain goes off in 1,000 ways, as I'm sure my listeners are hearing as well, of all the different things and all the different pivots and fluidity that you have going forward in this. It has been just amazing to hear about this. Last question for you. What's your technology prediction for the future?
change. It's really funny about going back to the technologies. Whenever I think I catch up to something, I finally learn something, it's old school.
Yep.
Here's what I'll say is whether corporate world, higher ed, any industry whatsoever, is I think technology, just like it's done every decade for the last umpteen decades, will continue to better our lives. But the key, what I'm finding, is that there will be people that are so used to old school and don't like change, and they'll stick their heels in and fight it all the way. And I guess my message from what I'm learning is be open, be a learner, because it's a way for generations to continue to connect with one another, and it's not going away. And it could be the greatest opportunity ever in the next 5 or 10 years if everybody just takes the time to understand TikTok, or the TikToks of the world out there and what a difference they're making in people's lives.
That is so true. Being open right now is key, not just for how people are living, but for those of you, listening to us that design, that develop, that work with people on new projects. Keeping an open mind of how to introduce this to them and how to incorporate fresh and new ideas and what's coming is so valuable right now. Scott, it's been so exciting talking to you today, and we could talk forever about this. I know you have an offer for our listeners, so I'll let you share that with us.
Yeah. First, I'll go to the website, www.moviecom, like moviesthatcommunicate.com. People can reach me directly if they want to call. I'll give you my cell phone number here if you want. That's okay.
That's up to you.
703-851-1244, 703-851-1244. And the offer is, we would be more than happy to come in and do an organizational assessment for you and talk to all the different constituents you have in your organization, whether it's e-learning developers, LMS providers, professors, and basically see if we could help at no cost. Okay. Also available to do demos. We have an entire team that knows how to do the demos of the platform. But if you want, just go in for free and go play. You can do unlimited browsing. You can do unlimited clip creation. You can even send it out to up to 50 people to get 50 views out of the free version, and just give you a sample of what we're actually doing. And last thing I'll share with everybody is just a little foreshadowing is, do you know what a mashup is?
Mm-hmm.
So we're actually in the middle of developing automated mashups. Where you can do clip to tell a story. Hopefully that will be out sometime soon, so our technology roadmap, to your point earlier, is really, really exciting. And the more feedback we get from people about what they would like, the more hopefully we can build into our technology stack.
Excellent. Oh, and a mashup would be ideal. We do a lot of that now, particularly in the training segments, where we're really trying to get people to learn 4 or 5 steps in a process. And so we find 4 or 5 things that we can pull together and create one outstanding learning experience. So this has been just fascinating. I'm so excited for your company and so excited for where you're going. I really want to thank you for joining us today. And to our listeners, thank you for listening to EdTech Speaks. We hope you enjoyed this episode and can make use of it. We encourage you to reach out to Scott and take him up on that offer, and definitely check out their website at moviecom.com. And we look forward to having you join us again. Find out more information about us on www.downingedtech.com, or follow us on Instagram and Twitter, and catch our podcast on Audible, Spotify, Apple, Google, iHeartRadio, and Stitcher. Thanks again, Scott. Have a great day. For everyone out there, until next time, keep learning.
Thank you for listening to EdTech Speaks with EdTech strategist Cher Downing. To learn more about the services Downing EdTech and its staff can provide you, find us at www.downingedtech.com. If you enjoyed today's podcast, be sure to share it. We'd also like to hear from you regarding any suggestions for topics or guests and the value you received from our show. Check back for new podcasts with featured guests at www.downingedtech.com/podcast.